The doors of the courtroom swing open, and the whole truth about the Brown family starts to come out in public. But what the judge hears in the next few minutes will change everything we thought we knew about love, loyalty, and betrayal in the Sister Wives empire. The courtroom is quiet, but it's not calm. It's stifling. The camera moves across the polished wooden benches, which are full of tension, and each breath feels heavier than the last. The lights above make a low hum, as if they are warning everyone that something that can't be changed is about to be revealed. Kody Brown is at the center of it all, with his hands tightly folded and his jaw clenched so hard that it looks like he's holding back years of words he never said out loud. Robyn Brown is next to him, staring straight ahead with glossy eyes, as if she already knows this isn't just a legal battle, it's a public unraveling. The energy is very different on the other side of the room. Christine Brown sits up straight and doesn't look away from anyone. Her face doesn't show any hesitation. Instead, it looks sharper, like she's finally ready to say everything she used to keep inside. Janelle Brown looks tired but steady next to her, as if she's been carrying a truth that was too heavy for too long. Meri Brown is sitting a few seats away, her fingers intertwined, watching every move like she's waiting for something she already fears. The judge comes in. The gavel doesn't just echo, it cuts. And all of a sudden, the case starts. The lawyer slowly stands up and opens a thick folder that only has the word marriage structure on it. But the stuff that comes out of that folder isn't paperwork. It's memories, fights, and recordings, which are much more dangerous. The lawyer's voice is calm, maybe too calm. Your Honor, this is not a normal family fight. This is a long-term emotional and financial mess based on secrecy, changing loyalties, and claims of manipulation in a plural marriage system that has never been fully revealed to the public. A low murmur spreads through the room. Kody moves a little in his chair, Robyn holds on to the table's edge, Christine exhales once, quickly and with control. And then the first recording is played. A voice fills the room. It belongs to Kody. But it's not the version that everyone remembers from TV. It's colder now, sleepy, angry. The recording says, "I can't keep pretending this is working like it used to. Things are falling apart, and no one wants to say so." A silence falls that feels like it has weight. The judge leans in a little bit. And that's when the lawyer says the first words that completely change the mood. This was recorded 2 months before the first separation became public. For the first time, Robyn's eyes look at Kody. Not mad, not sad, fear. Because she knows what's going to happen next. And it's even worse. The courtroom changes into flashback testimony. First, Christine is called. She slowly stands up, smooths out her sleeves, and walks toward the stand like someone who has already made it through the storm, but still remembers how it almost broke her. The lawyer asks her one simple question. When did you really feel like the marriage was over emotionally? Christine stops. Not because she doesn't know, but the answer is too heavy for the courtroom to hold. Then she starts to talk. It wasn't just one moment, it was 1,000 little ones that made me realize I was alone even though I was still married. Kody's face gets tense right away. Robyn looks down. Janelle shuts her eyes for a second. Meri doesn't move at all. Christine goes on, her voice steady but full of feeling. I kept hoping things would get better. I kept hoping that if I changed more, stayed quiet, and worked harder, people would notice me again. But I wasn't a part of the family anymore. I was just living in it. The lawyer pushes another piece of paper forward. This is a financial record that shows how resources were not evenly distributed among households during the last years of the marriage structure. The word unequal hangs in the air like a sentence that has already been written. Kody finally says something, but it's almost like he's talking to himself. That's not how it went down. But no one answers, because the papers don't argue. They are just there. And they're making something that the courtroom is starting to get. This isn't just about love coming to an end. It's about who was in charge of the story while it was going on. The judge asks for a short break, but the tension doesn't go away, because something else is being made behind the break. Something that no one has seen yet. A video that is sealed. It only has a timestamp from the night everything supposedly broke for good. And when the court starts up again, no one is ready for what they are about to hear. Not even Kody. Not even Robyn. And not the women who used to live in this family home. The courtroom has barely settled after Christine's testimony when the atmosphere changes again, heavier this time, as if the room itself is holding its breath for something it already fears. And the judge signals for the sealed evidence to be brought in, a black folder placed carefully on the stand marked only with a date that no one in the room seems willing to say out loud, while Kody Brown leans forward slightly, his eyes narrowing as if recognition alone is already hurting him, and beside him Robyn Brown presses her hands together so tightly her knuckles pale while across them. Aisle Christine Brown doesn't blink, as if she's bracing for confirmation rather than surprise, and Janelle Brown shifts uncomfortably in her seat like she already knows this moment has been coming for years, while Meri Brown quietly lowers her gaze, almost as if she's praying not to be included. In what comes next, and when the attorney finally speaks, his voice drops lower than before, controlled but sharp, saying, "Your Honor, this is a private recording retrieved from a closed family discussion dated less than 60 days before the final breakdown of the plural household agreement." And instantly the air changes because everyone understands this is not just evidence, it is memory being weaponized in real time. And when the screen in the courtroom finally flickers on, the sound that comes out first is not words, but tension, a faint argument already in progress, voices overlapping. Tired, fractured, and unmistakably familiar, because it is the voice of Kody arguing with someone off camera about balance and respect and who gets what attention, and the camera angle is unstable, like it was never meant to be seen by outsiders, and suddenly Robyn's hand grips Kody's arm. Without looking at him, as if instinctively trying to anchor something that is already slipping, while Christine exhales sharply through her nose like she's watching a truth she has already lived through being proven in front of strangers. And the recording continues with Kody's voice rising, saying, "I'm exhausted from being pulled in every direction like I don't matter in my own life." And those words land differently in the courtroom than they ever did in private, because now they are not emotional expressions, they are legal weight, and the attorney pauses the video right at that moment, letting silence do the damage before continuing softly. This is the moment the structure of the family is officially under dispute, and immediately the judge looks down at the file again, while Robyn shakes her head slightly like she is trying to reject the version of reality being constructed in front of her, but the attorney continues and resumes the video, and now the tone shifts inside the recording as another voice enters, calmer but firm, identified as Christine, saying, "We've been saying the same things for years and nothing changes unless it benefits one side." And the word "one side" echoes in the courtroom like a crack forming in glass, and Kody's expression tightens harder, his jaw working as if he is physically holding himself back from reacting, while Janelle's eyes glisten slightly, but she does not look away, and the recording continues showing. Arguments escalating, financial discussions blurred with emotional accusations, references to resources, time, and fairness, all overlapping until it becomes clear this is no longer just a family disagreement, but a system collapsing under its own contradictions. And then, suddenly, the recording cuts to a quieter moment, a pause inside the chaos, where Robyn's voice can be heard softly saying, "I don't want this to fall apart, but I don't know how to fix what everyone already believes is broken," and for the first time in the courtroom, Robyn looks like she regrets the screen. exists at all, because now her words are no longer private fear but public confession, and Christine looks down briefly, swallowing something heavy, while Meri's fingers tighten together again like she is holding herself in place, and then the attorney stops the video once more, letting silence return, and leans forward saying, "What you are seeing is not a single incident. It is a pattern that has been recorded over time that leads to the breakdown of trust in the household." At that point, Kody finally speaks out loud, his voice strained. This is being taken out of context, but no one responds, because context is exactly what the courtroom is now putting together piece by piece without permission. The judge raises a hand for silence, but the tension has already changed shape, becoming less like argument and more like exposure. As the attorney reaches for the next file labeled Only Financial Divergence Report, the room feels like it is on the edge of something irreversible. Because everyone now understands that the sealed video was not the climax, it was only the beginning of what the court is about to uncover. As the screen prepares to switch again, Robyn finally whispers something barely audible to Kody, but his face says he already knows what she said, and that whatever comes next is going to hurt far more than anything that has been shown so far. The courtroom does not recover from the sealed recording. Instead, it sinks deeper into a heavier silence as the attorney slowly slides another folder onto the desk labeled Financial Divergence Report, and the moment those words are spoken, every person in the room instinctively understands that. This is no longer about emotions or memories, but about structure, money, control, and the invisible architecture that once held the Brown family together, while Kody Brown sits back slightly in his chair, exhaling through his nose like he's preparing for impact rather than defense, and beside him, Robyn Brown stares at the folder with a fixed expression that no longer looks like fear alone, but confusion mixed with realization, while across the aisle, Christine Brown finally shifts for the first time, her posture tightening as if she knows this is the part where feelings turn into evidence. And Janelle Brown leans forward slightly, eyes narrowing as if she has been waiting for someone to finally say what she has suspected for years, while Meri Brown remains quiet but visibly tense, her gaze fixed on the table like she's bracing for a truth that will either confirm or erase her place. In the story, and when the attorney begins speaking again, his tone is no longer exploratory but precise, almost surgical, saying, "Your Honor, this report outlines the distribution of shared income, property allocation, and household financial prioritization over a multi-year period under the plural marriage arrangement," and immediately the word prioritization causes a ripple in the room because it implies choices were made, not accidents, and the judge looks down slowly, signaling for continuation, and the attorney opens the first page where numbers are displayed not as cold data, but as a timeline of imbalance, and as he reads aloud, the courtroom is forced to listen to years of family life reduced into financial patterns, with Kody's name appearing repeatedly in decision columns that show where resources were directed, and each mention makes Robyn's breathing slightly uneven as she shifts in her seat like she's trying to understand how something she lived inside can now look so different from the outside, while Christine's face hardens not in anger but in recognition, because the report is confirming what she once felt but was told was emotional exaggeration. And Janelle's reaction is sharper, her lips pressing together tightly as the attorney reads a section describing disproportionate allocation of household support funds toward a single household unit during peak years of shared income. And at that phrase, the courtroom collectively reacts, small. Movements, subtle gasps, lowered eyes, because now the argument is no longer subjective, it is documented. And Kody finally interrupts under his breath, "That's not how it was structured," but his voice is weaker than before, less denial and more fatigue, and the attorney does not stop. Instead, turning a page and revealing a highlighted section labeled Discrepancy in Autonomy Expectations, and as he explains it in simpler terms, how decisions were influenced, how expectations were unevenly applied, the emotional weight in the room intensifies, because everyone realizes this is not just about money, but about who had agency and who did not, and Christine shifts again, her voice finally breaking into the testimony as she is asked to respond, saying quietly but firmly, "We were told it was equal, but lived experience never matched what we were told." And that sentence lands harder than any legal argument because it is personal truth translated into public record. While Robyn looks down and shakes her head slightly, whispering, "I never saw it like that," almost to herself, but the microphone catches it and it becomes part of the courtroom reality, and Janelle suddenly speaks. Up without being prompted, her voice steady but emotionally charged, saying, "I saw it. I just didn't know I could question it," and that one line changes the mood of the whole room because it turns confusion into recognition. Even Meri, who has been quiet, finally looks up as if she realizes that silence itself has been part of the system being examined. The attorney then shows the next document, household time allocation records, which breaks down not money but attention, visits, and presence across households. As he starts to explain how time was measured and recorded over the years, Kody leans forward again, his voice sharper now. "This is invasive. This is not how a family works," but the judge calmly reminds him that what is being reviewed is not intention but impact. And that distinction changes everything, because suddenly the courtroom is no longer debating feelings but analyzing patterns of lived reality, and Christine exhales deeply as if something inside her is finally being validated after years of doubt, while Robyn's eyes fill slightly but she refuses to look away from the table. And Janelle stares at the documents like she's reading a history of her own life rewritten in statistical form, and Meri slowly folds her hands tighter as if holding herself together, and as the attorney prepares to introduce the next section labeled Testimonial Contradictions Between Households, the tension spikes again because everyone now understands the financial report was only the foundation, and what comes next will not just expose imbalance but directly challenge every memory each of them thought they shared. And the judge signals for continuation, and in that moment the courtroom feels like it is standing at the edge of something irreversible, because the truth is no longer being discussed, it is being reconstructed in real time. And no one, not even Kody, can tell what version of the family will survive what is about to be revealed next. The moment the judge nods for continuation, the courtroom shifts again, heavier than before, because the next file the attorney places on the stand is labeled Testimonial Contradictions Between Households, and the phrase alone sends a subtle ripple through everyone present as if they already understand that this is where memory itself will be put on trial, while Kody Brown sits forward now, no longer leaning back, his eyes fixed on the folder like he is trying to anticipate which version of himself will be played back, and beside him Robyn Brown looks uneasy, her hands clasped tightly, as if bracing for emotional impact rather than legal argument, while across the room Christine Brown maintains her steady posture, but her eyes narrow slightly because she already knows inconsistencies are about to become evidence, and Janelle Brown exhales slowly, her expression calm but alert, like someone preparing to confirm what they've always suspected, while Meri Brown sits quietly with a distant look, as though she is bracing for her own voice to be used against her in ways she cannot control, and when the attorney begins speaking, his tone is even more precise than before, saying, "Your Honor, we have compiled sworn statements from multiple household members across different periods, and when placed side by side, they reveal significant contradictions regarding time allocation, financial communication, and emotional support claims, and immediately the phrase side by side feels like a warning because it implies comparison, judgment, and exposure, and the judge signals for the first comparison to be shown, and the screen lights up with Christine's earlier statement where she says, "We all agreed decisions would be shared equally." But as it fades, another statement appears underneath it from a different time where Kody says, "Final decisions always rest with me when conflict arises." And the clash between those two lines creates an immediate silence in the room because both cannot exist as equal truths without contradiction, and Kody's jaw tightens as he mutters, "That was taken out of context," but no one reacts because context is exactly what the court is reconstructing. And then the attorney introduces Janelle's testimony next, her voice from a deposition stating, "We communicated openly about financial strain and adjustments, followed. Immediately by a recorded contradiction from another household meeting where communication is described as inconsistent and filtered through selective updates, and Janelle visibly shifts in her seat, her expression tightening not in denial but in recognition of how differently the same system felt depending on where it was experienced, while Robyn watches the screen intently as her own earlier words appear next, where she says, "We try to make sure everyone feels included in decisions," but then another statement follows from a separate interview where she admits, "Sometimes I don't know what was decided until after it happens," and that contrast visibly shakes her composure because it reframes inclusion as perception rather than reality, and Christine glances briefly toward Robyn but says nothing, her silence heavier than judgment, while Meri finally looks up fully as her own contradiction appears, where she once said, "I feel part of the family structure," followed by a later statement where she admits, "I often feel like I'm on the outside of decisions I used to be part of," and that moment lingers because it shows emotional drift quantified as contradiction. And the attorney pauses the display, letting the courtroom absorb the collective weight of mismatched truths, before saying calmly, "These contradictions are not presented to assign blame, but to demonstrate systemic inconsistency in shared lived experience," and Kody finally reacts more strongly, leaning forward and saying, "You're turning a family into a courtroom statistic," but the judge immediately interjects, reminding him that what is being examined is not family emotion but disputed testimony under oath, and that line lands hard because it removes sentiment from defense and replaces it with legal framing, and Robyn whispers something barely audible, "I didn't know it looked like this from the outside," but Christine responds softly without looking at her, "We didn't know it looked like that from the inside either," and that exchange shifts the emotional tone from confrontation to fractured understanding, while Janelle looks down at her hands as if realizing she trusted stability that was never consistent, and Meri quietly exhales, her eyes glassy but controlled, and then the attorney announces the next segment titled Cross-Household Communication Logs. And immediately tension spikes again because everyone understands this means private conversations, messages, and calls are about to be reconstructed in public space, and Kody sits back slowly, his face now fully serious, as if he realizes the next layer will not be about interpretation but direct exposure. And the judge leans forward slightly, signaling continuation, and in that moment the courtroom feels like it is no longer just reviewing a case but dismantling a shared reality piece by piece, and as the screen prepares to change again, Robyn closes her eyes for a second while Christine remains still. Janelle watches forward without blinking, Meri tightens her hands again, and Kody stares at the evidence like he already knows the next reveal will not just challenge him, it will redefine everything that came before it. The courtroom feels different the moment the attorney announces cross-household communication logs, because now it is no longer about interpretations, contradictions, or financial patterns, but about direct words spoken in private moments being reconstructed in public space, and that shift lands heavily on everyone as Kody Brown slowly straightens in his chair, his expression tightening like he already understands that private control over the narrative is gone, while beside him, Robyn Brown instinctively lowers her gaze as if bracing for emotional exposure rather than legal questioning, while across the room, Christine Brown sits with a stillness that feels sharpened by experience, as if she has already lived through every message before it is shown, and Janelle Brown leans slightly forward again, her calm expression now mixed with anticipation. Because communication has always been where truth leaks out, while Meri Brown remains quiet but visibly tense, her eyes fixed on the screen, as though she is preparing for her own voice to be heard without control, and when the attorney signals the start, the screen lights up with text messages projected in chronological order, and the first exchange appears between Kody and Christine, short and clipped, where Kody says, "I can't be in 5 places at once," followed by Christine replying, "I'm not asking for more than fairness, I'm asking for presence," and that simple exchange immediately shifts the Tone in the courtroom because it reduces years of emotional distance into 2 lines of unmet expectation, and Kody exhales sharply but says nothing, while Robyn glances at him briefly before looking away, and then the logs continue with Janelle's messages appearing where she writes, "We need A." Consistent system, not last-minute decisions, followed by a delayed response from Kody saying, "I'm doing the best I can under pressure," and the attorney pauses briefly, explaining that response delays average several days during key decision periods and that detail lands quietly but firmly. Because it turns emotional distance into measurable absence, while Janelle's expression tightens slightly as she watches her own patience documented in timestamps, and then Meri's messages appear, more emotional in tone, where she writes, "I feel like I'm not being included in conversations that affect me," followed by a brief response from Robyn saying, "I didn't know you weren't informed," and that moment creates a subtle shift in Robyn's posture as she reads her own words on screen, now stripped of intention and placed into consequence, and the attorney continues, showing a group conversation thread that includes all households, where overlapping messages reveal confusion about schedules, financial approvals, and visitation timing, and the more it scrolls, the clearer it becomes that the issue was not lack of communication, but lack of synchronized understanding, and Kody suddenly interrupts, his voice sharper now, saying, "This is selective. You're picking fragments to make it look chaotic," but the attorney calmly responds, "These are complete threads, not excerpts," and that correction silences him more effectively than argument ever could, while Christine watches the screen steadily and then quietly says, "We weren't being heard." Even when we were speaking, and that line seems to settle over the courtroom like a verdict in itself, while Robyn's eyes begin to water slightly as she whispers, "I thought things were being handled between everyone," but no one responds because even that belief is now part of the contradiction. Being examined, and Janelle leans back slightly for the first time, exhaling as if realizing that structure she relied on was never structurally consistent, and Meri remains still, but her expression suggests recognition that absence in communication is also a form of participation. And then the attorney introduces a new set labeled Missed Response Impact Analysis, which breaks down how delayed replies affected scheduling, finances, and emotional coordination, and the judge nods for continuation, while Kody leans back now fully, rubbing his forehead briefly as if fatigue is replacing. Defense, and Robyn looks toward Christine for the first time directly but cannot hold the gaze, and Christine simply looks forward again. Not angry, not emotional, just resolved, while Janelle quietly watches the screen as more delays and unanswered messages appear, and Meri finally shifts. Slightly in her seat, as if acknowledging she has been part of a system that communicated more in gaps than in clarity, and as the attorney prepares the next segment titled Emotional Language Mapping Across Households, the atmosphere shifts again, because everyone understands this means their tone. Word choice and emotional patterns are about to be analyzed in court, and Kody stares forward without speaking now, no longer arguing but absorbing. While Robyn steadies her breathing, Christine remains firm, Janelle stays focused, and Meri waits silently. And in that moment, the courtroom knows. Longer feels like it is revealing secrets one by one, but rather reconstructing an entire emotional ecosystem in real time, and as the screen dims for the transition, the judge signals continuation once again, and the silence that follows is not empty. It is loaded with everything still waiting to be spoken.